Even though I'm gay, I've realized my best friend is the love of my life, but now that I'm battling cancer, I'm terrified I'll never get the chance to tell him he's the only one I want forever. My dearest friend in the world is a man named James. I try to describe how great he is, but it's honestly easier just to tell you the story. James and I grew up in the same town, a conservative Christian town in nowhere, USA. The first time I met him was on the playground at school. He saw me sitting alone under a tree and came over to ask me if I wanted to play with him and his friends. I said no, but he noticed I was reading a book about space, the solar system, to be more precise. So he sat down next to me and asked me which planet I thought would be the coolest to visit. We ended up talking for the rest of recess about what we thought the other planets might be like, and when we went back to class he introduced me to his friends. Meet my new friend, my name. We were inseparable from that point on. It was one of those things where the entire town, our parents included, had us married off by age 8 or something. We didn't understand at the time, of course, but I would go on family trips with his family, stay over at his place and vice versa through most of elementary school. Get in trouble for talking during class every day, though not really because the teachers all loved him. This dude can charm his way out of anything, it is unreal. We were best friends. When we finally reached the awkward teenage years and dating became a thing, he asked me to the first school dance and I said yes. We sort of started dating by default. I don't think we ever talked about it explicitly, but I just started calling him my boyfriend to other people and we went with that. Very little changed about our relationship. We still basically just did all the same stuff we used to do before, except our parents got stricter about the sleepovers and there was more hand-holding and cuddling. Kissing and stuff was always difficult for me and I didn't know why, but he never pushed me on it at all. Not even once. The 2 times we tried he was able to tell very quickly that I was uncomfortable and he just shut the interaction down by messing up my hair playfully, saying enough of that, how about we just watch a movie? I just assumed one day I would get it. Well, I didn't. Sometime around 15 years old I started to realize the problem. I wasn't intimately attracted to men. This was a very trying time for me, given the kind of environment I grew up in. This was not acceptable. My parents were extremely religious and extremely anti-LGBT. After about 8 months of identity crisis over this, I decided to muster up the courage to tell James before anyone else. I didn't know what to expect. I was terrified. I went over to his house trembling. He had done what he always did, made my favorite snacks and got the controllers and my favorite game, Diddy Kong Racing, ready to go. He opened the door and gave me a hug and I came in. I was so scared. We sat down and he looked at me for a second before putting his hand on mine and asking me what was wrong. So, I tried to tell him. And I got halfway through the sentence, struggling to actually say I'm gay, before he just interrupted me and said, "You're gay." Yes. I know. Is there anything else? Followed by that goofy smile I love so much. I just froze in place. I asked him if he was mad and he just laughed and told me he loved me the way I was, and this was the way I was. I just started crying and jumped into his arms. It felt like 10 minutes at least of me crying before he finally interrupted me in characteristic fashion, remarking, however, "I will be mad if you let the pizza rolls I made get cold, so how about we stop crying and start eating?" We stayed best friends after that. We never actually had a breakup talk, but we did start to date other people. We talked and hung out almost every day until we graduated and he went away to a big-name college. The night before he left he came and picked me up and we drove around town and hit all our favorite spots. He drove me back home at 3 in the morning or something in the rain and I took his hand during the drive home and fell asleep on his shoulder. I remember wondering then for a moment if I should just marry him anyway. But he was going away to college, and I'm not attracted to men, so it probably couldn't work no matter how I felt about him otherwise. He promised to stay in touch, but I didn't know if that would happen. Well, it did. Obviously it wasn't like before, but he made sure to call me every week just to check up on me and see how things were going. I went to college close to home. We'd talk about how hard college was, whoever we were dating at the time and whatever drama was going on. During his junior year my parents found out that I was gay. They did not react well and I was basically kicked out of my home to save me, my dad going on about me needing Jesus 40 days in the desert like a lunatic. My parents are good people, so this didn't last and they have more than made it up to me since and worked hard to unlearn their bad programming, but that was an awful time. I did what I always do and called James. He talked to me for about an hour and then got his mom to drive up to get me so I could stay in his old room. Then he flew home the next day pretty much just to cheer me up and make sure I was alright. Vintage driving around in circles singing like idiots and 2 a.m. junk food runs did the trick. I later found out from my mom that he had also gone and confronted my parents and stood up for me and told them they should be ashamed of themselves, and if they were willing to lose their daughter over this they were unfit parents and not the second family I thought you were. My parents worship him, so this was effective, and my mom still tells this story to this day. Once again I remember wondering at the time, will I ever know anyone else in my life who would do this for me? But he was heading off back to college and he was still a man. So I didn't do anything. Years went by. He got married. I got a long-term girlfriend. We stayed close the entire time. We saw each other a lot less, but it was still great every time he visited, and we had frequent text and calls. I looked forward to his visits all year. And then tragedy struck. His wife divorced him. I never liked her, but he did. I think she used him for a green card and he was too sweet to notice, but that's neither here nor there. He came back home, so I saw him a lot more. Obviously, he was crushed, but we got through it together. And then, I got the diagnosis. At age 27. Cancer. There's nothing I can say that describes the feeling, so I'm not even gonna try. Decent chance of survival, but I had to start treatment right away. This experience has changed me and my outlook on life more than anything else that's ever happened to me combined. At first, everyone was there for me. I was getting visitors daily, friends, family, everyone. But as the weeks turned into months, it all stopped. Most people, even my friends, started coming once a week, then once a month, then many not at all. When things were looking bad around the 7 or 8 month mark, my girlfriend broke up with me claiming she loved me, but she couldn't handle watching this. Almost 2 years in now, and there's only 5 people who are still here. My mom, my dad, my sister, my BFF Amanda, and James. I almost can't talk about it without crying, but James is here every dang day. Every day. For hours. He may have missed 20 days in almost 2 years due to work-related travel, and even then he calls me. He comes in and asks how his Amumu, which he's called me since we were kids, because I like cows and those are my initials, is doing, and listens. He brings my favorite snacks and treats when I can have them, board games we like to play, old video games on handheld so we can play. He sings to me and shows me pictures of places he's been that I'd like to go to, and talks about taking me once I'm better. He sits there and holds my hand in silence so I won't be alone until the doctors tell him it's time to go. Then he does it again the next day. I've never seen him cry or show any sadness. If I even casually say something like if I get better, he'll immediately interject saying when you get better. He just won't give up on me. The only other person who is there like this is Mom. Even my dad, sister, and Amanda, who have also shown up in big ways, are not this consistent. I could write a whole post about how this experience has changed my relationship with Mom as well. She's proven to me that no matter what happened in the past and what we may have clashed over, she loves me like no one else, except maybe James. My mom is the #1 all-time James fangirl. She has been attempting to get me to marry him since I was 7 years old. A long time ago she stopped that. But about 3 months ago she made probably her first comment of that kind in around 7 years. I guess there are a few things she said. The first was pay attention to the people who are still here now. They're the people who always will be. They're the people who love you and not just what you can do for them. Which sort of set me off on the whole months-long train of thought that led to this post. Amanda and my sister also make a lot of comments about James. Both really like him, and Amanda told me a few visits ago that she thinks I love him, and one reason none of my other relationships have worked out is that the other person can always tell they're #2 everywhere but the bedroom. Then about a month ago, Mom was a little more direct. After James left one evening she told me, "Baby, in all my years on this earth, I've never seen anyone love anybody like that boy loves you. I know you don't like it when I talk about this, but trust me, if you let him go again you're gonna regret it forever." I don't know what has changed, but this time when she said that, I just knew she was right. Every relationship I've ever been in has had some problem or thing that has to be worked on. Most of them have several. The only thing missing here is that I don't feel a strong urge to rip his clothes off like I have with some, but honestly, not all or even most, of the women I've been with. But even there it's different. In general I find the idea of being with a man disgusting, but I don't find it disgusting with him. I like being touched by him and being close to him. He's so gentle. Lately I even find myself fixating on his lips and daydreaming about kissing him. I'm not that intimate of a person, and I think overall, of the people I've known in my life, I would be happier with him than with anyone else, and it isn't close. Now the big problem is the cancer. Honestly, I'm not really on the fence about this anymore. If I survive, I want to be with him. I'm getting better and the doctors are hopeful. But I am not sure if I should tell him now or not. I want to tell him so bad. I want him to know how much I love him. Lovers have come and gone for both of us, but every time I close my eyes and think about times I felt truly loved, understood and accepted, it's always his smiling face I see. When I think about times I felt warm and safe, it's his arms I feel wrapping around me like a warm blanket just my size, his voice I hear saying, "Don't worry Amumu, it'll be alright." Or cracking some silly joke. I want him to know that I want him with me, by my side forever. There's nowhere I'd rather be than wherever he is, doing absolutely anything. Cuddling up on the couch making jokes about stupid movies, playing our favorite video games, talking about life till 2 a.m., driving around in circles while he sings boy band songs like a goofball. I don't care as long as he's there too. I want him to know that if I survive this, we will be together. That's what I want. That's all I want. He's all I want. But I'm scared to tell him, because I don't know what's going to happen. If I don't make it, would it have been kinder to just keep this to myself? If you were him and in this position, would you want me to tell you how I feel? Update. So tonight I told James. I told him everything. Gosh. I just wish I could relive this night over and over again. I've never been so happy. He came into my room this evening like he always does. Greeted me. "Hello, how's my Amumu doing today?" I told him I was doing well. He told me I looked beautiful. Which is not true, but it still felt so sincere. Then he started unpacking the stuff he brought me today. I asked him to stop and just come sit with me because I wanted to talk to him. He nodded and came and sat down next to me. "What's up?" he asked. It took me a bit to gather myself. I kept getting distracted by his eyes. How he looks at me sometimes, I don't know how to describe it. I told him I love you. And he just kind of laughed and touched my hand before casually responding, oh, I know that, I love you too. In retrospect, this wasn't the best way to start, I guess, since we've said that enough, with a different understanding that he didn't get what was happening. He started to get up again to unpack the snacks, and I grabbed his arm and asked him to let me finish. He looked confused, but he nodded and sat back down. And then I did it. I told him everything. I told him about all the times in the past I'd thought about just marrying him despite my sexuality. I told him my favorite memories of him and how they make me feel. I told him he'd always been my best friend and the person I trusted the most. I told him I made a mistake and I should have chosen him. I then basically devolved into reciting the last paragraph of my first post to him. He's the face I see when I think about feeling loved, the embrace I feel when I think about being safe. It doesn't matter what we do, if we're together I'm happy, and he's the only thing I want for the rest of my life. He basically froze. He said nothing, just looked at me as I spilled everything. I am not sure he even blinked. When I finished and looked up at him, he was sitting there like a statue with his mouth slightly open, still enough it was like he forgot to breathe. James always knows what to say, so this was a little unnerving to me. I started to ask him if everything was all right, but before I could finish, his expression broke. He exhaled into a weak but incredibly tender, quivering smile, and he just reached out and pulled me into a hug. I buried my head in his chest and his arms just wrapped around me. I just melted into him. He was so gentle. It felt so easy. It felt so right. Then he started crying, and then I started crying. He's been coming here through 2 years of cancer treatment and never seen him cry till now. He held me for a while, but however long it wasn't long enough. He still hadn't actually said a single word since I finished talking, but I guess he didn't really need to. Then he finally answered my question with, "Now it is." When he finally pulled away, his face was red from crying, but he just looked so happy. He looked at me for a bit. It was kinda cute because he had a little trouble maintaining eye contact, which he usually doesn't. He was like a little boy again. Then he finally looked right at me and he just said, "You are the only thing I've ever wanted." Then I started crying again and he started crying again, and he pulled me to him and held me again. I wish it never ended. A little bit later, once we exhausted our crying capacity, I showed him the post. He made a few jokes about wanting to meet this James guy and about how he had better go and thank my mom for her 20-year wingwomanship lol. Then after he finished reading it, he kissed me. It felt easy, not scary at all, and just right. He asked me if it lived up to my daydreams and I chuckled and said yes. Then he said, "I'm not so sure myself, I think I need more data," and kissed me again. He is so ridiculous, but this was smooth as butter. Then after that we started talking, and I guess he told me everything too. He said he'd loved me since we were little kids. Told me he still has every drawing, letter and craft I ever made for him in a safe that he took with him to college and has taken everywhere he's ever lived. We talked about the day I came out as gay to him, and how he'd figured it out earlier, but he struggled to accept it for months in secret because he had lived his entire life up to that point assuming we would be a family and wanting nothing else. He told me he thought about our last night before college all the time, and he kept hoping that entire night I'd say something before he left, because then he'd have transferred colleges to stay with me. Told me he actually took a very long way home just to prolong the time when we were holding hands and I was sleeping on his shoulder, and that it was to this day his favorite memory. Then he looked at me with those piercing green eyes and said, "For me, there has never been anyone else." He loved once, me, and then struggled through a bunch of rebounds, and even though he had learned to bury it and move on with life and was happy in our friendship, his heart had only ever belonged to me. Honestly, I guess I should have known this. My dad told me he was sure this was true before, but I didn't listen. But I was flustered and deeply moved. I joked that he should enter the Olympics as a torch carrier, and he said they'd never have a chance. I'm the greatest there ever was. We sat and talked and reminisced some more, mostly about when we were kids. I found out some things I never knew because he avoided telling me how romantic some things were for him after I came out, but I also kinda realized. I think they felt romantic to me too. Then he sang me some of our songs. His voice is so beautiful. We had another embrace and another kiss. Both still felt divine. I can't wait to have my hair back again so he can pet it like he used to when we were kids. Then I brought up the love-making question, and oh my gosh, it was the cutest shit ever. I barely got to say anything before he started tripping over himself like, "Look, I don't even care. I don't need that. If we need mistresses or something we can do that, it doesn't bother me. I just want to wake up with you every day." Which was sweet, but then I told him that even though I didn't know how that would go, and I might not be able to, I wanted to try with him anyway when I got better, and oh my god, he turned tomato red and could barely look at me. Literally could not even manage to form a sentence in response, just mumbled incoherently before managing to get out, "Okay, if you're sure." This man has been married and had 6 girlfriends, but he completely just falls all over himself at the thought. God, it was adorable. This is the only thing I'm still a little worried about, but I do want to try. I mean, I like the kissing, which I thought was completely impossible. And I know that if it doesn't turn out well, it won't ruin anything and we'll still be together and just figure something else out for that one need. Then we talked about the cancer. He is so sure I'm gonna make it. It's so touching. It took a little while to get him to take the other possibility seriously. When I finally did and I told him that it's the reason I didn't tell him sooner, he held my hand and told me that if that happens, he'd be okay because he'll always know that he was one of the lucky ones because he was mine. Jesus Christ, I almost lost it. Then he said if we don't have that much time left, we better make sure every minute counts. I said that's pretty hard to do in a hospital, and he replied, what do you mean? We're both here, and that makes this the best place on earth. Dear God, what did I do to deserve this man? I teared up again, and he held me one last time. Then the doctors came in. He kissed me goodnight. We both said I love you, but it felt so different. It's never felt so good to say or hear those words. Then he smiled at me and left. I was so excited, the first thing I did was call Mom, and she was just ecstatic. I think she might be happier than me, which is saying something, lol. As soon as I told her what happened and that James and I are together, she just started crying and talking about what a good boy he is, how she just knew this would happen and that she can rest easy now because she knows I will always be loved and taken care of. Plenty of her destiny talk, which usually gets on my nerves, but honestly I was so happy tonight. Screw it, I'm on board. Maybe it was destiny. I guess sometimes Mom really does know best. I feel like a teenager again. I never thought I'd feel this way again in my life. I never even imagined if I did it would be for a man. God, I love him so much. Now I can't understand what I was ever worried about or why I didn't do this years ago. Thanks so much to everyone who read my story and helped give me the perspective and courage I needed to finally do what I should have done years ago. Now as long as my health cooperates, I'll be one of the lucky ones too, because I am his. OP comments on her post getting reposted months later. I guess as another small update, things are going pretty well for me considering the circumstances. Oncologist is still very optimistic and I am feeling better, not at the moment, but that's because of chemo last week. I'm responding very well to treatments and things are continuing to look better and better on the health front. And James has just been the absolute best. He was already such a huge source of support for me before I told him how I felt and we became a couple, but since then, man, there's no words for it. I guess he feels like he doesn't have to hold back on the affection and support, and it's been absolutely wonderful being cradled in his love basically every hour of the day. I feel so lucky and I am so glad I told him, and so thankful to everyone who responded to my post and helped me muster the courage to do so.